remind you, we thought we'd do it differently this morning. Welcome to the presentation. We're very happy you're all here. Before we start, we've made a little video about copper, which some of you have seen, but we thought it's so lacquer, we'll just play it again. So can we play the video again, please? The scramble for copper really is on in South Africa, and the Northern Cape is the main focus. There's a significant shortfall of copper in the world, and it will have an impact definitely on the price of copper and the demand for it because of the shortage of copper. Back. So before we start with the presentation, I thought it would be more appeasable to you to look at our processing operations in light of a video, and that is a proudly South African made video. Hein, who made it? What's the band's name? Where's Hein? Because he disappeared. Oh, we'll find out, but we'll tell you. But it's one of our leading South African bands that made the video for you. I'd like to welcome you all and say thank you that you're here. I'm going to take you through a slide presentation, but you're welcome at any stage throughout the presentation to stop me and ask questions. Okay. Hello? Control's not working? Oh, there we go. Okay, so who are we? We are proudly South African. We have a fantastic team that are bold, brave and innovative, have endurance and courage. But we will remain humble in this process. We never give up. We are building South Africa's next copper giant in the Northern Cape. I think a lot of people have forgotten about the copper resources in South Africa. And we have just listed on the JSE this morning. We represent the only pure copper play in South Africa. So, hello copper and hello JSE. So let's talk a little bit about the listed company at a glance, now that we are listed. Our ticker code is CPR. We're on the Alt-X of the JSE. We have 629 million shares in issue, 669 fully diluted. We are listing at a price of R4, although I'm delighted to see, despite the fact that nobody's bought yet, because nobody wants to sell, that we have bids at R4.75. And that should give us a market cap at of about 2.5 billion rand, with a free float of about 15 to 20%. Then if we just look at the source of our capital and what's come with the listing, as part of the listing, we did a pre-listing raise of about 42.5 million rand in December, and that was to order the long lead items that we needed for the growth that we're planning. In the listing, we were oversubscribed, but we raised in the private placement 152 million rand, and then we've got a further director sales and investment of 62 million rand on an interest-free basis, and that brings the total capital available to the company for the growth we're planning to about 257 million rand. I don't know if there's any questions on that. And that makes us fully funded for all our growth plans that we are going to take forward. So we are not coming back to the market again for money. Don't know if there's questions. Okay, so for the next year and a half, at least. Yeah, at least for the next year, because we are building up, we're currently doing 50 tons of copper, building up to about 650 tons per month at the end of the year. And that will give us copper production of about 8,000 tons on an annualized basis. And thereafter, we're planning to ramp that up further to about 16,000 tons. But up to 8,000 tons this year and next year, we don't need to come back to the market. And if we do get and deliver on our plan, we'll generate revenue on an annual basis of 1.2 billion rand, and we've got about a 45% profit margin. So we'll make about 5 to 550 million rand in net free cash flow. And if we're making that money, then we wouldn't have to come back to take the production from 8,000 to 16,000 either. And we've got no debt on the balance sheet, except for that interest-free debt instrument that we put in place. So what makes us different? I think what makes us different is that our operations produce high margin, high return. That's what we drive. We're not about volume. We're not obsessed about volume. We're obsessed about the margin we make, low cost, low capital, simplicity, and reliability. So I think it's just prudent, now that we are listed, to explain our business model to us, because we are quite different from our peer group and from other companies that operate in the same space in South Africa, but also in Africa. And our model is very simple. We plan, we scale, and we man the operations. And the input parameters is simplicity, reliability, low cost, grade driven. We do it ourselves, and we're quick to production. And what that does, it gives us a growing profit margin. We are not concerned about growing revenue, and organic upscaling, which doesn't require Brendan further capital. Because what we do and what we'll do going forward is exactly what we've done in the past. Pilot plant implementation, which we scale to full production. It's easier for the team to implement. There's less risk in that process, and there's less capital committed. So let's talk about the cluster mining model. We've spoken about that in the listing. The cluster mining model gives us a flexibility, and it gives us flexibility because we can plug the mine and the processing process that we do. And the reason we can do that is because we've got multiple sources of ore, all in a 35 kilometers radius. And we can access any one of those sources as we have trouble. And that is what gives us the flexibility and I think the advantage over other companies. And that's all supported. If you look at this map of the Northern Cape, you can see Springbok is down here. Nababi is where we will build all our processing capability. We've got the mining license in red that covers 19,000 hectares and a whole bunch of other sources of ore that feeds in. But all of this is in a 35-kilometer radius. If this copper field was anywhere else in the world, there'd be 40 other juniors on it. There's only 2 juniors here, and we hold the most prospective ground. So that's the advantage. And we'll show you later how much ore we have. But in addition to the favorable geography, we have even more favorable geology. So on the left is a slide that shows one of our tectonic plates subsiding beneath another one, and that is how copper formed. And I obviously don't want to get into a geology lesson here, but the point of that slide is that we are looking at large-scale regional structures that form the copper in the Northern Cape. That's why we've got big copper deposits here. Everybody thinks we've got small deposits, and there's not a lot. This is huge structures. And from the slide on the right, that you can see here, you can see all the mines that are concentrated in a 35-kilometer radius, and we own most of them. This has been and will remain and will still be a significant copper district in the world. So, the other thing to add on, that's a photo on the left of our plant that makes the copper cathode. And in the background and on the right is actually some of the loose rock we process. Our costs are very low because we've got pre-developed ore bodies and we've got loose rock that we move. That makes our costs low, but at the same time, we're also rehabilitating the environment by taking away these old rock dumps left by the previous miners, reprocessing it, taking out the copper, and then redepositing it in old mining excavations. So we also have a green pedigree. Okay, so before we go on to the value drivers of the copper, let's first just talk a little bit about why copper is critical. And the reason I've got a dinosaur up is not because I had a whiskey when I made the presentation and I wasn't quite there. I made it because if we don't find more copper in the world, we'll probably become extinct like the dinosaurs. And the reason for that is simply these 2 slides. On the left is a slide over time that shows copper production over the life cycle of the Earth, projecting it forward. And you can see that over the next 2 years, we will have to find another 700 million metric tons of copper. That's the equivalent of what all man has produced up until now. That's a scary figure. But what's even more scary is the copper production on the right. You can see that in 2024, Chile falls off the graph. All the big Chilean copper mines comes to an end. There just isn't enough copper. And if we take that even one step further, is every EV, or the EU has a target that 30% of cars on the road by 2040 has to be EVs. Every EV electric vehicle uses 85 kilograms of copper. That means the world needs 42 million tons of copper by 2040. Copper production currently is 20 million tons and is forecast to fall to 12 million tons by 2033. Where's the copper going to come from? That's just EVs. We haven't factored into that equation sustainable renewable energy or infrastructure development. If you factor that in, we're in big trouble. The other important thing to note is, if you look at the graph on the right, currently the price of an electric vehicle in this year, last year, 2022, became exactly the same as the price of a diesel or petrol car. That's going to change the whole equation, because now EV is cheaper than the other cars. And sales of EVs are going to take off like they've done in America. That's going to make the copper problem even worse. And just look at how the curves are steep for the copper you require for wind, solar, offshore. There just isn't enough copper. And to be a copper producer in South Africa just puts us in a very unique position. People haven't realized this because this hasn't hit them, but this is going to hit the world pretty soon. And copper can't be replaced by any other metal. I see that copper is even used in brewing kettles that make beer. So what are our key value drivers? This picture on the right is a picture of our Rietberg mine that's pre-developed, and it's the first mine we're going to be bringing into production. And there's a piece of core that we recently drilled. We will soon be putting our drilling results out in about 2 weeks' time. All I can say is that we have intersections that we will report on that will blow people's minds away. Okay, so let's look at those key drivers. The first one is the size, the grade, and the distribution of our copper. And this wasn't after the second glass of whiskey, but if my biology serves me right, that's a humpback whale. Now, it will soon dawn on you why I'm doing this. I'm going to give you an analogy with regards to a copper whale to show you how much copper we have. Now, if I did my stats right, my research, a humpback whale is about 35 meters long, 12 meters in width, and about 5 meters thick, and it weighs 150 tons. Okay? If I now say that that copper whale has got 1.5% copper in it, it's like calories, you know, then every whale, humpback whale that weighs 150 tons will have over 2.25 tons of copper in it, and at the current copper price of $220,000 rand a ton, it means that a whale like that would be worth 500,000 rand. Okay. Don't worry, Rupert, I haven't lost it. It'll make sense soon, I hope. So let's look at the Rietberg ore body we have. That in yellow is our mineralization of all the ore we can still mine. And that's the current development that's in. We don't even have to develop to the ore. It's already been done for us. It's open and accessible. That ore body is 450 meters long. Okay? Where's the whale? There's the whale. Can you see it? If you can't see it, I've put a circle around it for you. I need 11,000 whales to fill that ore body up. And each whale at 500,000, that's 1.4 billion rands worth of copper sitting there. Just at our little small Rietberg mine, and we have 11 more mines like that. But as Hein says, but wait, it gets even better. If we go back to our license area, mining license, and we look at other sources of ore, we have 2.5 million tons of copper in the ground. Not all of it is SAMREC compliant, but that's our resource. What does that mean? If I want to fill that 2.5 million tons up of copper with the whales that I spoke about, I would need 1.1 million whales, okay? At 500,000 rand a pop, that means we've got 560 billion rands worth of copper sitting in the ground. That's a significant figure. I don't know, do you know what that means? Jaco, do you know what that means? Have you got any concept of what 560 billion rands worth of copper means? I thought so, that's why I made another slide for you. You see, I should have put in what does it mean for Jaco. Remember my 1.1 million whales are 30 meters far, every whale is 35 meters long on average. 1.1 million whales times 35 is 38,500 kilometers. The circumference of the earth is 40,000 kilometers. Therefore, I can go with, or we can go with our copper whales almost once around the world. That's how much copper we have. That's huge. That's huge. That's what we've got right here in our backyard in South Africa. And everybody wants to run it out. I saw Anglo this morning exploring in Zambia. Poor bastards. They're just going to lose a lot of money there. We've got it all here in South Africa, and everybody wants to run out. And we've got it in an area with extremely good infrastructure, despite Eskom. So that's one of our advantages. What's the other advantage? The other advantage we have is our in-house design and engineering capability. We have our mining engineer, not our mining engineer, we have our engineer Tinus here. He's known as Bob the Builder. He can fix and build anything. He's got a big workshop. Next to him is Jacqueline, our process engineer. And you can see the people we have. We've got in-house electrification. We can design and build anything, and we can engineer and manufacturing. We don't have to go outside and get contract companies to come and costly, over a long period of time, design our plants and build them for us. We do it ourselves, and we have done it successfully. The other big advantage we have is our data set. When we acquired the mining license, or when Shirley, our chair, started the process of getting the mining license, she also got all the data. The data set is worth over 5 billion rand. There's more than 580,000 meters worth of drilling we have. To reproduce that data set would cost us 5 billion, but more than that, that data set allows us that we don't have to really drill. We don't really have to develop. Everything's been defined. Huge strategic advantage. The other advantage we have is the fantastic team that we've got on site. I mean, we have a highly experienced, technically able team and fantastic people out of the community that does the work for us. In the next strategic advantage, I'll talk about some of our partnerships, but to perhaps just highlight this. In our SXEW plant, built in Ababib, small, with BASF, the first artificial intelligence software was developed to predict whether a SX plant will have trouble or not. Jacqueline, am I right? That software is now going to be rolled out worldwide. It was tested and developed here with BASF, and they're a huge company. That's what's going on. That's what our team's doing. Producing the first copper cathode only purely from a copper company. We know some of the big platinum companies produce plates as a byproduct. First copper produced in this area in 20 years. That's what the people from Nababib, Concordia, Kip, and Carolisburg have done. People with experience from previous mining. Where do you get that in the rest of the world? You don't. And then, as I've said, we need to talk a little bit about solar. And we need about 10 meg in terms of solar requirement for our operations. We are looking to build our own solar plant in the next 2 years. We've got 2 gentlemen here from the consulting company that's helping us with that. And just our current requirement of 1.3 meg, we can satisfy by putting solar panels on all our roofs. And we're going to start doing that from next week. And that solves our power problem. Doesn't help to complain about the issues in South Africa. You make a plan and you move on. So electricity is not an issue for us in the future. And then our growth. That's the plants, the new concentrate plants that we've designed, a sketch of them, that we've done in-house and that we'll build in-house, and that will be responsible for our growth. So let's look at that in numbers. I'm always going to get into trouble because I'm not allowed to forecast, and if I forecast, I don't know, the board's upset. Let's forecast. I've got to tell you what we're going to do. We can't tell you it's a great company and we sort of not going to tell you what we're going to do. So now these are my get into trouble slides. So that's the copper production outlook for the company over the next 4 quarters. We're currently sitting at about 50 tons of copper from the SXEW in blue, and that's the production the concentrate plants will bring. So by Q4, we'll be up over the whole quarter, we'll be producing 1.4, and that will lead to about 8,000 tons of copper production. That means that this company will then, in a month, make close to 100 million rand in 1 month, 1.2 billion rand over a year. So we've listed a company that's currently making 8 to 12 million rand a month, to a company that by the end of this year will make 100 million rand a month by spending 260 million rands worth of capital, and has all the growth I've just shown you. If that's not a value proposition, then I don't know what is. The other thing that's important, I've highlighted our strategic partners. We have one with BASF, critically one with our communities. I'm not saying the relationship with our communities are always good. It's like any marriage. There's periods when we have big fights and we don't talk to each other for a while, but we are both committed to a beautiful future together. And I must say the communities are really great in the area. We have unbelievable support and input from our communities. And in this respect, because this is such a critical factor, we've appointed a director, executive director, that will only focus on the community. Professor Quentin Adams, that's sitting over there, is the man that will keep the communities happy. But Quentin has got a vision of not just talking to the community, but helping them plan what, if you look at for Concordia, the town, Quentin, what that will look like in 10 years with all this development going on. And how we'll use, what's that word, Quentin, you use? Co-urban design. To help the community in replanning their whole town. So this is the forward-looking aspect we've got in terms of our communities, and without doing that, you will not run a successful business in South Africa. Obviously, our new strategic partner is Ikapa Mining. They're a big diamond producer in South Africa, but they bring some skills that we will use. Gordon, our Chief Operating Officer, is sitting at the back there. Gordon, they're going to help us with some of our pre-screening and milling upgrading, where they are absolute experts in that, which will further lead to an upgrading of our resources, we hope, and get rid of a lot of the waste, which creates a lot of the cost. So there's a lot of synergy that they're bringing, but over and above the fact that they're a strategic partner, they virtually underwrote this funding to the tune of about 180 million rand. So you can see that they are extremely committed to our process. And then obviously our other partner is the municipality in Springbok, and we've got another partnership with Metaltech. So we are not afraid to form strategic partnerships to get where we need to get. It saves us a lot of money and cost. So in short then, or in summary, our future. We're in production, we're cash flow positive. We've listed, we are growing our copper production to 650 tons a month. The return on capital is less than 24 months. And then this is an important one. Our all-in sustaining cost is $4,500 a ton, and our current price is about, it's a little bit less than the 9.8, it's about 9.4. So you can see the margin we have in terms of our copper production. Told you about the shares. We have no debt except for that one debt instrument, which is interest-free, and we do have a dividend policy in place that will start kicking in from next year. Experienced team. We're the first movers in the area and the region rulers. We have secured offtake agreements, so the off-takers fetch our copper at the mine gate, and then it's their problem, and they pay us within 3 days. So we have none of the transnet problems that the other producers of metal have in the country. Spoke to you about the revenue and the large resources we have that's virtually pre-developed. So thank you. Questions? Brendan?
What you're saying about the copper market is what Robert Friedland's been saying for the last 5 years, and what Gary Nagel at Glencore has been saying. What you're saying about the copper market is what Robert Friedland's been saying for the last 5 years, and what Gary Nagel at Glencore has been saying for the last 2 years. But Gary Nagel also made a point earlier this year. He said the markets just don't get it. They just don't get the situation that you've outlined. So from your perspective, what is it going to take for investors to realize, hey, there is a huge problem here, and for the copper price to respond the way it should?
Before I answer it, probably need to rephrase it. They probably said Nagel and, what's the other one's name? Friedland. They've probably been saying what Shirley and I've been saying for a long time. I'm just filling your joke. Brendan, Brendan, I don't know, because even if I look at the statistics, because every now and then I go and look at the stats with Shirley and the board, because you say these numbers and people say to you, it can't be right. And you go back and you look at it again, and I say to you, I don't have the answer for you. I don't know what we're going to do. But all I can tell you is, and I can see it, production stocks ran out 3 months ago virtually, ran out for the world. I don't know, Brendan. I really don't know. We have a serious problem. I don't think we're quite there yet. But I think as from next year, when Chile falls off the map, there's going to be a big problem. And the problem is you can't substitute copper. We can park the EVs, because EVs confuse things. Let's take them away. If you look at infrastructure development, which is critical for our survival, then there isn't enough copper. Shirley, what do you call it after the Industrial Revolution? We now have a?
The world currently has an energy crisis, and
Yeah.
therefore we are at the brink of the electrical revolution.
Brendan, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're in trouble. And there is no other metal that will replace copper. That doesn't help, but I don't know. I just review the numbers and I say, let's just check it again, because yes, it can't be right. That's why, for example, Anglo is just committed in Zambia with a junior going into copper exploration. That's why they're doing it. But to find a mine takes, Dion, Peter, 6-7 years. And to develop a mine, Gordon, takes 10 years. Unless you have deposits like the ones we have, which was previously mined by Newmont and Goldfields, that's pre-developed. But remember that the scale at which we're going, which is fantastic for us, it's not the scale at which Anglo and Newmont and Rio Tinto can go. So even if they get a big copper deposit, they can't bring it to account. Maybe the fastest is 4 years, 5 years. Big problem. Anybody else?
Hi,
Hi.
Lisa from News 24. Where's your copper going? Who are your customers? Do you have offtake agreements?
Top secret, can't tell you.
Ah.
No, we have an offtake agreement with SA Metals, who's a South African metal smelter, and they've got their own copper and wire business. They're currently taking all of our copper. They're based in Cape Town and Joburg. And then we also have an offtake agreement with Noble Metals. They're an international copper trader. They will take the copper concentrate and copper plates as well. And that will go down to Cape Town and Saldanha, and then out to Singapore, Hong Kong, wherever. At Mine Gate, which is great. We pay a little bit of a extra premium for that. But what's nice about this is as it gets taken at the Mine Gate, it's not our copper anymore. And we get paid very quickly by them. And we don't have transport problems, security problems, export, shipping, all that. And you ask, another person asked, why will they do that? The reason why they will do that, Brendan, is exactly because there isn't enough copper. Even a small producer like us is on their radar screen, and they are tying us down. We've had 3 offers this week of traders who wants to buy our copper. So even that's why, because there just isn't enough copper. Yes, Brendan. Could have started limiting you to 3 questions a session.
You should be paying me for my presence here too.
Can I do it in copper plates?
Yeah, sure, I'll take copper plates. Jan, if I look at you in the big picture, you're a junior company which has control of what looks like a huge resource. What is your long-term strategy? Are you looking to develop this area by yourself? Or like the normal junior approach, are you looking to develop to a point where you get taken out by a senior? Do you want to develop this yourself, or is your end game to have somebody like Anglo or Antofagasta buy you out at a very handsome price?
I'm going to give you my answer, but I think I'll also give Shirley the opportunity, because she's the biggest shareholder in the company, to tell you also what her view is. But Brendan, if you want to flip it up the value curve and sell it, you have to play the game differently. And that's not who we are. We are here to build it and mine it ourselves and to make the margin on it. And simply because the numbers are scary in terms of what we can make. Now, if Anglo walks in tomorrow and offers us 100 times more for than what the company is worth, yeah, sure, it'd be stupid not to look at it. But, you know, at this stage, in terms of where we are in the cycle of value unlock, there's no ways we'd sell this. We've already had an offer from a mid-tier in South Africa, and I'm not going to say who they are. But, you know, it's too early for that. So our strategy is to build it ourselves and develop it, because it's so, in terms of it's low-hanging fruit. It's pre-developed, it's there, it's on surface. And that's what we are committed to do. But if somebody comes and writes us a check that we don't understand, we'll look at it, because our job is to create value for the shareholders. And if somebody comes with a big check and that creates value for shareholders, we look at it. We must as a board. But our intent is to do it ourselves. But I'll let Shirley comment, because Shirley is a big controlling shareholder, so I think it's important you get her view on what she believes we should do. Shirley? We'll bring a mic. I'll bring you a mic. That would be nice. Very happy that you scream at Brendan.
Brendan, I can maybe say, is this, oh, here it is. We are, again, I'm saying, the world has got an energy crisis for various reasons. South Africa, in Europe, you're looking at the old energy grids that are starting to collapse due to age, same as in America. And we're sitting with a strategic metal. And again, we are on the brink of an electrical revolution. We would be mad to let it go. Absolutely. So I'm in it for the long run. You will have to pull me out of the company if I'm 80 years old at this stage. So that is my view.
Does anybody else, sorry, in answer, anybody of the team or of the board, Quinton or Gordon, Rupert, does anyone else want to comment with Shirley on that? Because it's an important question. Rupert? Gordon?
No, we as a board, when we've discussed...
Hang on, they must bring you a mic.
Our view as a board when we've discussed this has been exactly what Jan and Shirley have said, is we regard this company as so dynamic and so productive and so profitable and so prospective, and it's like maybe we've got stars in our eyes, but right at the moment we're not realistically thinking of flipping it to anyone, is we want to do exactly what Jan is saying, is we want to run it for a while, and because it just looks fantastic.
The other thing is also, Brendan, if we had to start building something new from scratch, we might have a different, but we've already built the SXEW, which is a difficult processing plant to build and run. It's as difficult, Jacqueline, as it gets. Probably perhaps for zinc, SXEW. But the team's done it. The team has gained the experience. The quality of the people that we've brought in terms of mining expertise and processing, this is not difficult for them to do. And remember the scale we're doing it. It's like plug and play. It's like Lego box. We build small things and then we scale them up. So your faults are less onerous on you, your capital's lower, more time to get it sorted out, and then you just run it. So the team's there, the team's doing it already. And it's low-hanging fruit, so, you know.
Can I just add to that, please? We have an opportunity here to change the legacy of mining, to do things different, to influence generations to come. And to be in that position is absolutely a privilege, and it will be very, very difficult to let go to a major company, because they might not have the same values as us.
Yeah,
and that is important.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Shirley. Sorry, this is a long question, so we're going to get to you now. There is it might sound very strange to you, but the founding partners and the board have decided that we are going to develop this area, and make no mistake, we're going to try and make as much money as we can. You know, we are proper capitalists, but we are capitalist options, and people don't believe us, but come and visit us and we'll show you. We will not make a lot of money at the expense of the communities around us, and we will make sure that the communities prosper equally to the way we prosper, and therefore we have a totally different approach to how we deal with the communities and how we engage with them. And that's, for example, why Quinton is looking at co-urban design. Which other mining company is doing co-urban design with a community? You know, why do you have a guy like Quinton? He's a very nice guy, but, you know, he's expensive, and to have him on board is, you know, he's looking at me funny now. So, but we have a serious intent to uplift that community, not because we think we're great, but because that is the right thing to do. We're going to make a lot of money, but we're going to make sure those communities become prosperous and that we create what we call a lighthouse community in South Africa, where we can together hold hands and all make money and change this absolutely nonsense narrative I hear about South Africa every day. I'm sick of it. And as a company, we have the ability to do that. And with all due respect, I don't think the majors get that. So it'll be difficult to sell to them. They'll have to write 2 big checks, one to us and one to the community. And we have 4 communities, so there's going to be 5 checks. Problem. Yes. Dudley.
Yeah, hi, Jan. Thanks for your presentation. So I know I'm a little conflicted in this, but as an energy advisor, it was interesting to me what you said about the EV side of things. And I'd like to tack onto something that Shirley said, that this is for the generations, I think you said, of the future. And of course, we're talking about electrical generation in my case. There's a really interesting number to take this out of the EV space, is that South Africa or Southern Africa needs somewhere in the region of about 60 gigawatts of solar photovoltaic power, or wind, or whatever it might happen to be. Now, the number that you should keep in mind is about 5.5 tons of copper per megawatt of solar generation, which is in fact the lowest copper usage of any generation technology. So multiply that by 60,000 and you get 330,000 ton requirement of copper just in this country.
Yeah.
Okay, so that puts into perspective, I don't know how many years, but that 16,000 tons a year, 330,000 tons is going to take you, I don't know, you've got a very, very long future ahead of you. So just to take it out of the EV space and just put it into the electrical power space.
No, but thank you for that. Thank you for that. And that highlights another problem for South Africa.
So I did want to ask you a question before you get onto that, is to say, so in relation to the 330,000 tons, what proportion of the market do you think you will be supplying in the southern African market?
Sorry, what, 330?
So 330,000 tons
Oh, what
of
you
copper
said.
is what would be required of just for the photovoltaic
In
space.
South Africa.
Just for the South
Well, you
African
can do the
space,
sum
yeah.
yourself. We're
Yeah.
the only, I don't know what Palaboa is producing at the moment. And I don't know how much the platinum guys are producing. But as a byproduct, it's them. I think it's Palaboa if they're in production again, and it's us. So you can do the numbers, 16,000 divided by 330. It's not enough. But where's South Africa going to get its copper from? I read an article yesterday that a big portion of our copper comes from Russia. Big problem. We import the majority of our copper from Russia. Big problem. So even our little contribution could make a difference in South Africa, maybe not a major one. But it depends how we scale up, and how successful we become. We've got some open pit potential, which I don't want to talk about because then I really look like a proper car salesman, second-hand car salesman. But if we get a big super pit, which we believe we do have, that suddenly could take our copper production up to 5-6 times that. But let's just first crawl before we get there. But strategically, the development of the Northern Cape in terms of copper is important for South Africa. More questions? The team's also welcome to ask me questions. They can ask me real, proper questions. And I won't hold it against you guys. Serious.
Thanks. Just for the layperson, to understand all these whales in the ground, how many are actually ever going to surface, realistically?
So, of that 560 million, we can only recover, if we could take all of it out the ground, we can only recover about probably half of it, through the recovery process, maybe a little bit more. So then you have to take the 560 down to, what's half of 560? Come, Jacqueline. 280, thanks Gordon, 280. See, our team's clever, that's a bit more. 280. Wat? Julle moet my nie nou drop nie. So let's say we only recover a quarter of that, realistically. What's that? 140 million tons of copper, realistically. Because the copper in our area sits on surface, sits in shallow mines and have been pre-developed. So we don't have to go deep to get it. So I would say take a quarter of what we say realistically. Through recovery and normal process where some of the ore bodies won't be cohesive enough for us to design or not to get at all. But you must remember that our all-in sustaining cost for recovering copper is $4,500 a ton. Let's say copper goes to 12,000, the margin's huge. But this is where we're different. We will not increase volume if the copper price runs, because that's what miners do. I've been in the mining industry long, and I'm proud of it, but whenever the commodity price runs, we push volume at the expense of margin. We want to mine more tons, and tons don't make money. Copper plates and copper concentrate make money. So if the copper price runs, we'll keep on pushing high-grade ore bodies to make more margin and more money. Is it the Glencore model? Who's Glencore? I don't know who they are. I don't know any other junior called Glencore. No. Yeah, it is the model. It is that model. You know, and we can do that because we've got a cluster. We've got a cluster of ore bodies around us. So we are not forced to try and mine one ore body where it becomes unprofitable or difficult, because that's the only bloody thing we can mine. We can move and shift. But there's also an optimization to be done, you know. The mining engineers are going to fight with me later today about the statement I just made. But it's good if we pull and tug, ne, Gordon? Now, our team supports that. But we're not gonna push costs at the expense of an increase in the commodity price. That's stupid. No other questions? Come, there must be more questions. One question from the team. Come. Difficult question. Come.
When are you going to wear a tie?
Never. Only people from Glencore wear ties. No. You can take it, yeah. It's going to cost you about 450 Rand, but... No, not wearing a tie is not being disrespectful, but we are different. We don't want to operate like people who have suits and ties. Or, but two of our directors, I'm going to single out while I can. Three of them. Gordon, won't you stand? Just to show you that members of our teams do wear suits. He's our Chief Operating Officer. We have Quentin Adams here. Look at him stand, please. He's our director, looks after the community. Look at him. It's fabulous. Thank you very much. But the guy who takes the prize is our manager for solar. Staan asseblief. Neville, I mean, I think you should even turn once for us. I mean, just look at that. Eh? Just look at that. So I'm well supported by the team. You can see I do the work. This is the big boys. Another question. Everybody fine? Brendan, another one. Okay. Difficult one, please.
I want to go back to your comment about how you say the major mining companies don't get it. I know the comment about the major mining companies don't get it and they're not allegedly concerned with the communities. I think that's what you said. Now, every time I pick up a report from Anglo American, there's like 150 pages on ESG, corporate responsibility, this, that, and the other. Are you telling me they're paying lip service to this ideal? That you are more devoted than them? That they are actually talking nonsense in what they put their statements out?
I don't want to refer to I don't want to say that about Anglo Goldfields, but I will say this. No, I'll say this. The sustainability report, the cost of the sustainability report that the major companies do probably costs more than the money they spend on the community. Why don't you go and look at the revenue they generate and go and look at the money they put into the community? And yeah, it's a big number in most of the times, $1 billion or $500 million, but it's not more than 3 or 2% of what they make. That's not a real commitment, surely. Wage negotiations in this country, every year, we can't give people a 200 or 300 Rand increase so that they can have a living wage. But the CEO of a major company that screws the company up, which I read about in the Business Day, gets a payout of 150 million Rand. Come on, that's not serious. Is that serious? So I'm telling you, some of the junior companies are doing more than the major companies are doing, and the majors need to start looking at the juniors. Because I think there the juniors lead the majors. And you know why? Because we are more involved with the community. We are closer to the community because we're small. And our livelihoods, Quentin, and you can help me, are more dependent on the community than a major who sits in 6 countries and have our 400 operations. And, you know, I hear them complain about South Africa. There's another major I won't mention. Most of their money is made here, but they complain about South Africa. And their commitment to the communities are nothing. Sorry, at some point this has to be said. I'm in the mining industry, and I'm proud of the South African mining industry. But when I went to the community of Concordia the other day, I, as a white man from Stellenbosch, had to apologize to the community for the sins that the mining industry in South Africa has done to the communities in the country. Because at some point we must take responsibility. Now my board's probably going to say, Jan, you shouldn't say this. But I'm going to say it because it's time it's said. We must make a real difference. And the majors must start spending proper money on the communities, which will make South Africa a better place. We can't make the revenues and the money we're going to make. Even us, as a junior, you've seen the numbers. And then we say we're going to give the community 3 million rand this year, and we feel good about ourselves. Can't do that. I don't know, directors, am I out of line? Or? So I haven't accused anyone directly. I've just said the majors. That's why they won't let me join the Minerals Council.
Okay, so can we just ask, you're not going to join the Minerals Council?
No.
No? Okay.
I like what they're doing, but their voice is the voice of the major companies. Mm-hmm. And I'm a junior. Where's my voice in that crowd? I respect those people greatly. But where's my voice in a council which is run by the majors? So if they say, if they say they're going to agree to a wage increase of X, and I say I think it should be 4X, do you think they're going to listen to me? I don't want to be part of that club.
It's not a case of they don't want you.
No, I don't. They don't want. I don't think they want me because I say make these ludicrous statements about them not committing enough money. Of course, they're not going to like me. But we have to start changing what we do. The way we have wage negotiations in South Africa is an absolute disaster in the mining industry. You know, every year in February or March, we have this big fight. Industry comes in at 2 rand and the workers come in at 50 rand, and then we stand for 4 months and we do nothing and we destroy more value than if we could just reasonably sit down and also understand that those people that earn, you know, the executive of major companies probably spend on a weekend more money than their workers earn in 3 months. And then you tell those people you can't give them a sustainable increase in salary. Unacceptable. Sorry, this should be about copper, but...
Yep. Well, linked to that, I suppose.
Well, it's also about South Africa, and it's also about how we're going to make this country successful. And I'm not saying we have all the answers, but we have to start being responsible.
Well, yeah, it's just you sound actually a bit like Peter Skeet when he launched Blyvoor, but he couldn't keep the mining mafia at bay. Do you think your approach is keeping the mining mafia, the procurement mafia at bay, or how are you dealing with that?
Quentin, do you want to say something about that? I think our approach is to be fair and reasonable and have an equitable contribution to the community. And I think if we do that, the community helps protect us from exactly those people who are going to come in and cause havoc and problems. So it's again the approach. You know, I used to run Pan-African at one stage, and we had illegal miners there, and it took us 2 years to break the syndicates there. You can't win that problem with guns and security. You have to address the underlying social issue in your community and area. And when you address that, those problems will go away. Guns and security don't address, just more costs. More people we appoint with guns and security, the more security and guns the other guys appoint. It's a social problem. Good?
Yeah, it's also an issue of credibility.
Yeah.
They have to both
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an issue of credibility, and it's about this relationship with the community, and you build credibility over time because people have demands in the community, and we know the South African mining landscape has changed. I had a discussion with Brendan this morning regarding Maracana. So it's about the intersection between mining and communities, and that has changed. So you, as a new company, you have to build credibility. And credibility is to look at what are the needs. We're facing a triple challenge in South Africa: unemployment, security, violence, and youth unemployment. And how do we deal as a mining company towards those issues? And I think that will ultimately build, because there's a big distrust. People don't believe mining companies. And I think we are a South African mining company, and that is quite different. If we were a foreign company, it would have been even worse because of the atrocities that happened in the past.
So in short, the approach has to change. Approach has to change. And there I say the juniors are leading the battle, not the majors. More questions? Sure. Niks anders. Well then, thank you all for coming. We hope you enjoyed it. And we hope to soon have another presentation where we'll put out some good drilling results. Thank you.